On June 2nd, 1963, five science majors from Portland, Oregon, Edward Elrod, age 26, Harold Whitlock, age 27, Roger Caddel, age 25, Bonnie Katz, age 26, and Sylvia Hart, age 27, who were also close friends, set off from Pilot Station, Alaska. They were scheduled to be gone for 2 weeks, give or take, once they made it to Pilot Station, as they planned on floating the Yukon River all the way to the Bering Sea. 3 weeks later, they never showed up at their final destination, so a search party was launched. Their camp was found near the mouth of Aproka Pass. A thorough search was made of the area, and what they found not only baffled the rescuers but haunted them for years. Among the items they found were a camera and a notebook detailing their journey and what happened. The notebook belonged to Roger, who was believed to be the last survivor. These are excerpts from his notebook. Oddly, no dates were written on the pages, so investigators labeled them by days. There's been debate over the exact timeline and whether the days are correct, as he didn't write every day. Day 1. We're waiting at the airport for our Pan Am flight as I scribe this. None of us have ever flown, so we're nervous but excited. I'm not one who likes writing, but being the leader of the group, I decided to detail our journey down on paper. I also borrowed my parents' camera so I can document this wild journey we're about to embark on. We've been planning this trip for some time, as we've all been friends for several years and love a good adventure. We've done multiple backcountry trips in the mountains of Oregon and are always longing for our next journey. It's going to take us some time to get to Pilot Station, where we'll get the boat we plan on floating the Yukon all the way to the Bering Sea. I can sense the excitement in the air and their voices as we talk about what's to come, but also a sense of nervousness, as none of us have ever left Oregon before, let alone a place as wild as Alaska. Edward and I each brought along our father's pistols should we encounter any bears or wolves. Lord hope we don't need to use them. Day 2. We're in Anchorage now and should start our journey to Pilot Station tomorrow. I'm not sure what day we'll arrive exactly, as we're told, it depends on the weather. We're all tired, so our plan is to grab a bite to eat at the Tasty Freeze, then rest up in the hotel today. Day 3 or 4. We're on our way to Pilot Station now. I'm not sure if I'll write any more until we arrive. Traveling over the last few days has been dreadful. I may just take pictures if I feel up to it. Day 5. Thank God the transit is behind us. Tomorrow we start our adventure up the Yukon. The Alaskan wilderness is unlike anything I could have possibly imagined. The cold, almost unbearable silence at night is not only frightening, but magnificent. It makes one question what life we truly should be living. We become accustomed to the hustle and bustle of everyday life, but have forgotten this is where man came from. No wonder the wild is a never-ending call to some of us. It's something we can never escape. Day 6. We've been making our way along the river for the better part of the day. Sylvia and Bonnie seem to be struggling with how far away we are from any type of civilization. They both admitted it scares them something awful. Harold, Edward, and I have assured them they're safe with us. Not to mention the only way out is forward, so there's no choice but to continue. Our plan each day is to float until late afternoon or evening, then make camp in the best suitable spot we can find. Sitting around the campfire tonight talking about our lives, our futures, and desires was an incredible experience. Even though I've known them for several years, I feel like I know them on a much deeper level now. Day 7. Last night I was awakened to Bonnie whispering to someone just outside my tent. I sat up, almost calling out to her, until I realized I didn't recognize the person's voice she was talking to. It was a man's voice. I was struck with fear and didn't know what to do. I couldn't make out what the other person was saying, but it was clearly not Sylvia, and Edward and Harold were next to me in our tent. I laid awake the rest of the night, too afraid to go back to sleep. I went back and forth in my mind all night long as to whether or not to tell the others. Being we're in the middle of nowhere, the last thing I want to do is to cause others needless worry or make them fear each other, so I'm keeping it to myself for now. I casually asked Bonnie and Sylvia how they'd slept, and they both answered, fine, but cold. I could sense nothing wrong in their answers or their tone that would lead me to believe anything unusual happened. Day 8. Edward's been awfully quiet today, which is odd given he's the one that talks the most. He's been staring into nothing for most of the day as we made our way along the river. We're making good time and may spend an extra day on shore exploring when we find a good place to camp. We could certainly all go for a hike to stretch our legs. Day 9. I was dreaming I was back at home last night when Sylvia started screaming, "Something grabbed my foot! Something grabbed my foot!" Bonnie started screaming as well as us three men scrambled out of our tent. We could see their tent's flap was wide open, which it shouldn't be, as I watched them tie it before I retired to bed. I asked them if they untied the flap, to which they both replied they hadn't. My first thought was it had to be an animal, but there were no visible rips or tears on the tent, and an animal couldn't undo all 6 ties without causing damage or leaving behind evidence such as saliva or some kind of marks. I'm beginning to wonder if Bonnie is hiding something. I've been paying close attention to her behavior during the day ever since the night I heard her talking to someone, and she's been completely normal. Having known her for years, I'd like to think I'd know if something was off with her. I now sleep with my father's gun next to my side, praying I'll never have to use it. Day 10. As we were breaking down camp this morning, I noticed Sylvia had scratch marks on the back of her neck as her hair moved when she bent down to pick up her sleeping bag. They looked fresh, somewhat deep and painful from what I saw. I can't believe she hasn't mentioned it yet. I was about to ask her about it when Bonnie tapped me on the shoulder from behind, making me jump. I don't even remember what Bonnie asked, as a strange feeling instantly overcame me. I all but forgot about it until tonight, when I lay down to go to sleep and decided to write it down. Day 11. After several hours on the river today, we've come to a spot that looks good to spend an extra day. We're getting stir crazy sitting on the boat all day. There's still snow on the ground, but we're prepared for that, and a long hike will do us all good. We've been hiking for several hours and stopped to take a break. I need to write this down lest I forget. Sylvia and Bonnie have been whispering to each other throughout the day. I would think nothing of it, but I've never seen them do this before, and their behavior seems off. I can't explain it, but I have an unsettling feeling. It's as if they're waiting for something to happen. During dinner, Bonnie knelt down to stoke the fire, and I noticed the same scratch marks on the back of her neck as Sylvia. Day 12. Something terrible happened last night. When we came out of the tent after waking up, we saw Bonnie's and Sylvia's tent had been slit open and they were gone. It appears to have been cut from the inside, like they were trying to get out. It also appears they're barefoot, as we can see their tracks in the snow heading away from camp, one following directly behind the other. It looks like they might be without their clothes as well, as they're still inside their tent. Bonnie's pillow is soaked in blood, but there's not one speck of blood in the snow. Harold appears to be on the brink of losing his mind, and Edward is doing his best to calm him down. We're going to follow their tracks, and I've told Edward to bring his pistol, as will I. I have no idea what we're going to encounter or what exactly is going on. After following their tracks for 400 to 500 yards, we found something horrific and unimaginable. We found Bonnie in the bottom of a ravine lying face down in a stream. She was without her clothes, as we suspected. There were no visible signs of injury, so we were perplexed as to what she died from. Harold said it was from hypothermia, but then he opened her mouth, and we were taken aback as we could see her tongue had been cut out. This would explain her blood-soaked pillow. What's even more strange is Sylvia's tracks stopped at the stream, but she was nowhere in sight, and there were no other tracks in the snow in the area. It's as if she vanished from that exact spot. Rather than continuing to search for Sylvia, we thought it best if we carried Bonnie's body back to camp and took her out with us. Our plan is to get help finding Sylvia. We took turns carrying her, and after several hours we made it back to camp. Our hearts sank though, as to our astonishment, the boat was gone. My first thought was someone had to be following us and was set on killing us all, and that theory might have worked, but there were no other new tracks in the snow by the boat except the ones we'd previously made. I was the one who tied the boat off, and I specifically remember tying it well, as I'm fully aware if we lose it, there's a good chance we die out here. We placed Bonnie's body under a tree, covering her with her sleeping bag. I'm worried it's going to start attracting bears or wolves, and we know we must do something drastic tomorrow, or we might all perish out here. The boat had most of our food in it, so starving is also a factor now. Day 13. I don't remember going to sleep last night, and it must have been so deep I didn't notice Harold and Edward leave the tent. This is quite odd, as both their boots are still inside the tent. When I woke up and they were gone, I thought they were outside making a fire to cook breakfast, but noticed their coats were also still in the tent, along with the clothing they would be wearing. There's one sock on Edward's sleeping bag, which means he left only wearing one. I stuck my head out of the tent and saw their barefoot tracks in the snow. One set of tracks appears to be Edward's, as one track looks like he was wearing a sock, and the other track was clearly barefoot. I'm not ashamed to admit I'm almost too scared to leave the tent, but I'm trying to find the courage to pack what I can and follow the river out of here. Oh my lord, I think I just heard a man cry out for help in the distance. I know I can't sit in here and do nothing, knowing my friends might be injured out there somewhere, so I'm going to search in the direction I heard the man cry out. I'm leaving this notebook in the tent with the idea I'm able to continue the story. That was the end of Roger's notes. Several weeks later, a search party came upon their camp at the mouth of Aproka Pass. What they found has baffled investigators for years. They found both tents, with the ladies' tent being slit open from the inside, just as Roger's notes had described. Inside the men's tent was Roger's notebook, along with other items he described, including both pistols. The snow had mostly melted by the time rescuers had shown up, making it impossible to track their prints in the snow. There were still pockets of snow in shaded areas, though. Bonnie's body was still covered by the sleeping bag under the tree they'd placed her. 4 days later, they found Sylvia's body buried in the snow in a shaded part of a ravine, and most likely the same ravine they found Bonnie's body. What was strange about her, though, was she was found upside down with her hands together, but all of her fingers were gone. She was barefoot, wearing only a shirt and a pair of pants that had one of the pant legs cut off. There were no visible injuries to her except for her fingers being gone. They appeared to have been sliced off with a knife or something sharp, versus being chewed off, which would be easy to see. Harold was found on the other side of the river, wearing only his pants. One of his eyes was missing, and his body was riddled with cuts and blisters. The doctor who later examined him revealed his insides appeared to be crushed, along with his rib cage. Edward's body was found high up in a tree, in the same ravine as Bonnie and Sylvia. He was only wearing his underwear, and the rescuers could easily see his skull had been crushed. It took 2 more weeks before they found Roger's body. He was quite a ways from camp, fairly high up on the same mountain where they found Bonnie, Sylvia, and Edward. He was laying under a ledge of rocks with his arms folded, almost like he'd been carefully and purposely placed in that position. He was barefoot, wearing only his thermal underwear, and there were no visible signs of injury, appearing he died from exposure. When the doctor examined him, he said his insides were liquefied. Their boat was found overturned several miles down the river. They found the camera at camp, but the film had been removed and no other film was found. Roger never wrote in his notes whether or not he took any pictures. It's hard to believe he didn't, and there's no explanation for the missing film. There have been many theories over the years as to what happened to them, but nothing conclusive. Several family members of the deceased made the trek to their camp, hoping to find answers as to what actually killed them. It was rumored something was found that might explain everything, but it was never disclosed what they found exactly. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe.